I never imagined graduation would feel like this. Everyone said it was supposed to be the best day of your life. You walk across the stage, shake hands, throw your cap in the air, and celebrate surrounded by people who love you. But my chair was
the only one with no one sitting behind it. I tried not to look, but I couldn't help it.
all around me. Parents were waving, cheering, wiping tears from their eyes. Siblings were holding up signs, grandparents fumbling with cameras. I sat frozen, hands clenched tightly around the program, staring at the empty row behind me like it
was a spotlight exposing everything I tried to hide. I smiled when they called my name.
I walked across that stage with my head high, like I didn't care. But every step felt like dragging chains behind me. When I took my diploma and turned to face the crowd, I didn't search for a familiar face. There wasn't one to find. I returned to my seat, diploma in hand, and swallowed hard. Don't cry. Not here. When the ceremony ended, I avoided the groups forming for pictures. I slipped away through the side door of the gymnasium, holding my cap in one hand and a paper bag in the other, my celebration meal. Cold takeout I had picked up earlier because I already knew. No one was coming. I headed to my old car, parked in the far corner of the school lot where the cracked asphalt gave way to gravel, the same spot I'd used for years. I sat inside with the engine off, listening to the distant noise of celebration fade behind me. That's when I saw the envelope. It was tucked inside the bag, hidden beneath a napkin. A simple white card with my name written in neat handwriting. Ethan. No last name, no return address, just that. I stared at it for a long time. Then I opened it. Inside was a handwritten note, and for a moment I forgot how to breathe. To Ethan, you've made it further than many ever believed you could. I hope you know how proud I am of you. H. That was it. No money, no long speech, just a small card and an even smaller sentence. But it hit harder than anything else that day. I knew who H was. Only one person signed like that, Principal Harrison, a man I had clashed with more than once. A man who had once threatened to suspend me for skipping too many days, but who also once called me into his office and quietly handed me a lunch voucher when he saw me shaking from hunger. I had always assumed I was invisible to him unless I was causing a problem. I was wrong. A knock on my window jolted me. I jumped so hard I nearly spilled my food. It was him, Principal Harrison, standing there in his robes, looking oddly out of place in the dusty lot. I rolled down the window, unsure of what to say. Thought, I might find you here, he said casually. I tried to force a smile. Didn't feel like staying for the crowd. He nodded. Didn't figure you would. He leaned on the car slightly, arms crossed. You know, Ethan, people think showing up has to look a certain way. Banners, balloons, big family dinners. But sometimes showing up means sticking around when it's inconvenient, or quietly watching someone grow even when they don't realize they're being seen. I blinked. That wasn't a lecture. That was something else. He gave me a long, meaningful look. And sometimes, he continued, we need to give others the chance to show up. Then he stepped back, adjusting the collar of his robe. Oh, he added before leaving. The staff is having a small gathering at Donovan's Bistro in about an hour. Very casual, just a tradition after graduation. If you wanted to stop. I'm sure everyone would be glad to see you. He shrugged. Your choice, of course. Then he turned and walked back toward the building, leaving me with my cold food, the card, and a silence that felt louder than any cheering crowd. I sat there a long time. His words kept repeating in my head. Sometimes we need to give others the chance to show up. I had spent years focused on what I didn't have. The parents who weren't there. The family who never showed up. The birthdays I spent alone. The holidays I tried to ignore. But what if I'd been blind to what I did have? I watched the parking lot slowly empty. Families packing into cars, laughter and joy spilling through. Open windows. The contrast between us should have hurt, but it didn't. Not the same way. Not anymore. Because suddenly I was wondering about them. How many of those perfect-looking families were hiding cracks? How many of those smiling graduates had cried themselves to sleep too? How many had stories like mine, unseen, quiet, painful? I reached into the glove compartment and carefully placed the card inside. It felt too precious to crumple, too heavy to ignore. I checked the time. Donovan's Bistro. Just a restaurant. Just an invitation. No commitment. Just an option. Still, my stomach twisted with anxiety. But something else pushed against that tightness, a whisper, a flicker, something that felt dangerously close to hope. And hope, I'd learned, was a fragile, dangerous thing. The drive to Donovan's Bistro wasn't long, maybe 15 minutes from the school, but it felt like hours. Every red light gave me a chance to turn around. Every familiar street I passed reminded me how easy it would be to go home, heat up the food I'd barely touched, and disappear like I always did. I didn't belong at a teacher's dinner. I wasn't one of them. I was the kid they pitied. The one who stayed late because home didn't feel safe. The one who handed in assignments late and never had a working pen. What if they were just being polite? What if they didn't actually want me there? Still, I drove. I pulled into the parking lot of the bistro and immediately regretted it. The restaurant was glowing with warm golden lights, and through the windows I saw laughter, plates being passed, napkins crumpled after happy meals. They were already there. Teachers I had known for years, Miss Reeves, Coach Phillips, Ms. Coleman, faces I'd seen under fluorescent school lights now softened by the restaurant's glow. And they looked happy. I almost reversed. Twice. Then I saw her, Miss Reeves, getting out of her car just 2 spots down from me. She was laughing at something Coach Phillips had said, the way friends do when something small feels bigger in the moment, and then she looked up. Her eyes met mine through the windshield. I froze. She waved. Not just a wave, an enthusiastic, you better not leave wave, followed by a bright smile like my presence was something to celebrate. Suddenly, the door of the restaurant opened. Ms. Coleman was standing there, her graduation heels traded for practical flats. She was holding the door open like she was expecting me, like I was meant to walk through it. I reached into the back seat and grabbed my graduation cap. I didn't even know why. Maybe for courage, maybe for proof. Proof that I had, in fact, made it. Cap in hand, I got out of the car. The air smelled like grilled meat and warm bread. My heart pounded so loud it made my ears ring. Each step felt heavier than the last. By the time I reached the entrance, I was sweating from nerves. My fingers clenched so tightly around the cap I thought it might bend. Principal Harrison saw me first. He was seated near the back in a booth, nursing what looked like a seltzer and lime. He didn't wave or stand or call attention. He just nodded, slow and subtle. Approval. Quiet, but real. Miss Reeves met me just inside. Her smile widened. "Ethan, you made it!" Her voice was so full of joy, it felt like she meant it. Before I could answer, Coach Phillips clapped me on the back. "Knew you'd show. We were taking bets." I looked around. The room was full, but not crowded. No decorations, no speeches. Just laughter, clinking glasses, and tired teachers finally relaxing after months of chaos. And me. I stood awkwardly at the edge of the room. I didn't know where to go, what to say, or even what I was allowed to feel. But they made room. Miss Reeves pulled over a chair. Ms. Coleman slid a menu in front of me. Mr. Anders, the history teacher who once gave me detention for skipping a quiz, leaned over and said, "Get the chicken parmesan. You won't regret it." I managed a smile. I wasn't hungry. My appetite had left hours ago. I wasn't hungry. My appetite had left hours ago. The burger and fries on the passenger seat were cold now. The smell no longer comforting, but heavy, like a reminder of how out of place I felt in the world today. Graduation day. The day that was supposed to feel like an ending, or maybe a beginning. But for me, it just felt like a long, dragging middle. The gymnasium was still glowing in the tier distance. The echo of applause, the drone of family chatter, the crinkle of balloons being stuffed into cars, it all filtered through the parking lot like background noise in someone else's memory. I sat in my old car with the engine off, staring at the card Principal Harrison had handed me. "You were never invisible to us, Ethan. We saw you. We still do." How could one sentence, just 10 words, dig deeper than anything my actual family had ever said to me? I turned the card over again and again. It wasn't fancy, just school stationery, but it felt like holding something rare. I pressed my thumb against the edge of the envelope, thinking about his last words before he walked away. The staff is having a small gathering at Donovan's Bistro in about an hour. Very casual. If you wanted to stop by. My first instinct was to laugh. Me? Walk into a room full of teachers outside of school hours? Sit among them like I belonged? But then, why had he invited me? Was it pity? No. Harrison wasn't the pitying type. He wasn't warm exactly, but he was intentional, measured. If he invited me, it meant something. And that scared me more than if he hadn't said anything at all. The lot emptied slowly. Families trickled out in groups, arms around. Graduates, faces glowing. I expected that usual stab of jealousy, the way it always hit me on parent-teacher night or awards assemblies, when my row sat empty. But it didn't come. Instead, something else stirred. Curiosity. What were their stories? How many of those perfect-seeming families had hidden cracks? How many of those kids walked halls carrying weights like mine? I turned. The key in the ignition, not to leave, just to hear the engine hum, to feel like I could move if I wanted to. The air conditioning buzzed to life, cutting the summer heat. I glanced at the clock. The gathering would be starting soon. I could just drive by. No commitment. No pressure. Just see. I reached for the gear shift, and my fingers brushed against my graduation cap on the back seat. I hesitated. Then, on impulse, I grabbed it and placed it gently on the passenger seat, just in case. Donovan's Bistro sat nestled on the corner of Main Street, half hidden by ivy and old brick. The kind of place you'd never notice unless someone told you to look for it. As I pulled into the lot, my chest tightened. I counted 3 times I almost turned around. But then I saw her. Ms. Reeves laughing as she got out of her car. Coach Phillips beside her, gesturing wildly like he always did when telling one of his long-winded stories. And holding the restaurant door open, Miss Coleman, in flats now, her hair loose from the graduation ceremony bun. My teachers, my nightmares during midterms, my unexpected lifelines. I stayed in the car, frozen. I could still back out, drive, home, pretend none of this happened, but something kept me rooted. Something like hope? I stepped out. The cap stayed in my hand. I didn't wear it. I wasn't ready to be seen like that. But I held it. Like proof. Like armor. As I crossed the lot, Principal Harrison noticed me first. He didn't wave or shout. He just gave a small nod, quiet and respectful, like I was any other colleague walking in behind him. But then Ms. Reeves spotted me. Her smile lit. Up like I'd just walked on stage at some private concert she'd been waiting years for. Ethan. You made it! I opened my mouth, but no words came out. She didn't wait for them. She crossed the sidewalk and gave me a one-arm hug, quick and not too tight, like she knew not to spook me. Coach Phillips clapped me on the back. You clean? Up nice, he said, then winked. Well, cleaner than usual. A few more turned at the sound. Mr. Lee from chemistry, Miss Shaw from the front office, even old Mr. Halpern, who I thought had retired last year. All of them smiling. Not out of politeness, not out of obligation, but as if I was genuinely welcome. The knot in my chest loosened. Just a little. Inside, Donovan's was warm, low-lit, the clatter of cutlery and low jazz humming beneath the conversations. They'd claimed a long table near the back. Nothing formal, no speeches, no cake, but laughter filled the space. As I slid into a seat near the end of the table, I caught snippets of conversation. Finally finished grading those essays. She cried during the whole walk across. The stage. Still can't believe Ethan made it through after all that mess in junior year. I froze. That last line. I turned my head slowly. It was Miss Shaw. She caught my look and smiled gently. "I meant that in the best way, Ethan," she said. "You've been through so much, and you're still standing. That's something to be proud of. Still standing." It echoed. Because for so long I'd felt like I was always falling, scrambling, surviving. But she was right. I was still standing. And apparently they had noticed. All those mornings I showed up late, the days I disappeared without explanation, the weeks I looked half asleep in class, they hadn't just gone unseen. Someone had been keeping track. Someone had cared. I didn't say much that evening. Just listened, ate a little, laughed more than I expected. And as the night wore on, something settled inside me. Something I hadn't felt in years. Belonging. Didn't have the conventional graduation experience. No big family dinner, no proud photos posted online. But as I looked around at that table, at the teachers who had held me up without ever announcing it, I realized something important. Sometimes we find family in unexpected places. Sometimes the people who shape us are the ones we never expected to notice us at all. And sometimes we don't need loud celebration. We just need someone to leave the door open and mean it when they say we're welcome. As I walked to my car that night, graduation cap in hand, the sky wide and dark above me, I felt it clearly. This wasn't the end. It wasn't even the beginning. It was something else entirely. A quiet promise. To show up. Just like they did. I sat in the driver's seat, the night stretching long ahead of me. The glow of the streetlights filtered through the window, casting soft shadows on the dashboard. The weight of the cap in the passenger seat, so simple yet so symbolic, felt heavy. I hadn't expected tonight to mean anything, but it did. More than I could have imagined. I turned the ignition, and the car roared to life, my hand still clutching the wheel as I pulled away from Donovan's Bistro. The streets of the small town blurred past me, and for the first time in a long while, I wasn't looking back. I wasn't second-guessing, wondering if I should have done things differently. The past didn't weigh on me like it used to. It was like stepping out of the fog that had clouded my vision for years. That tight feeling in my chest, the one that always came when I thought about what I lacked, was gone. And in its place, a strange, unfamiliar freedom. I drove home in silence. The emptiness of the road felt less lonely now. The music from my old iPod, always a constant companion when I needed to block out the world, stayed off tonight. Instead, I let the quiet hum of the engine fill the air, and I let my thoughts wander. I thought about Principal Harrison and his words. "We saw you. We still do." I thought about Ms. Reeves, whose smile had been like a lifeline tonight, and Coach Phillips, who had always found humor in the hardest of situations, even when I didn't know how to laugh. About Mr. Lee, who never gave up on me despite my lack of enthusiasm for his class, and Miss Shaw, who had kept track of every little step I took, even the ones I didn't think mattered. They saw me. They showed up. And tonight, for the first time, I saw myself through their eyes. I reached the turn for my street, and without thinking, I pulled into the driveway. The house was quiet. Still. Empty. My parents hadn't been home for weeks, since before graduation. I didn't know when they'd come back. I didn't know if they would. I didn't know if I cared anymore. I grabbed my graduation cap from the passenger seat and stepped out of the car. The cool night air greeted me, but it didn't chill me like it used to. Instead, it felt refreshing. Like it was cleansing something inside of me that had been stuck for far too long. I walked up to the front door, stopping for a moment at the steps. There was a time when this place had felt like a cage, a prison of memories, of disappointment, of loneliness, but not anymore. As I unlocked the door, I realized that the house didn't need to be perfect. I didn't need to have everything figured out. I just needed to keep showing up. Just like they had. Inside, I placed the graduation cap on the small table near the door. It didn't feel like an ending anymore, but a marker. A moment in time that represented something bigger. In night. The days that followed, I took small steps. I reached out to those teachers, to the ones who had made that night possible. I sent messages, sometimes just to thank them, sometimes to ask how they were doing. For the first time, I was giving something back to them. A conversation, a connection, an acknowledgement that I was finally present, not just existing. I still wasn't perfect. I still didn't have everything figured out. But I had something I hadn't had before. A sense of purpose. And a sense of belonging. One evening, as I sat in the worn armchair in the living room staring at the blank television screen, a thought hit me. I had spent so much of my life trying to prove something to everyone else. My parents, the other students, the world. I thought I needed approval. I thought I needed recognition. But what I really needed was to show up for myself. And that was the hardest thing to do. It took years, it seemed, for me to realize that it wasn't the celebrations I'd missed out on that mattered. It wasn't the lack of a graduation party or the absence of a proud family photo. It was the people who had stood beside me when I was invisible to everyone else. They didn't celebrate me because I was perfect. They celebrated me because they saw something in me, something I hadn't even seen myself. And so I showed up. For them. For me. For the future. The silence in the house didn't feel empty anymore. It felt peaceful. And in that peace, I began to see the truth that had been there all along. I wasn't alone. And maybe, just maybe, I was stronger than I'd ever realized.